I never thought 3 words could sound like a breakup disguised as therapy, until my wife said, 30 days of boundaries. No warning, no big argument, no emotional speech about love or effort or compromise. Just that. 3 words that sounded like a self-help book no one asked for. It was a Tuesday. I was sitting on the couch, halfway through a cold beer, watching a rerun of some crime show I didn't even like. Emma walked in from yoga, smelling like lavender and confidence. She looked too calm, which is always a bad sign in marriage. She stood there for a second, like she was rehearsing the line in her head. Then, I've been thinking, yes, the 4 words every husband dreads. I muted the TV. That sounds dangerous. Go on? She smiled, the kind of smile people have when they're about to sell you something expensive. It's called 30 Days of Boundaries. I heard it on a podcast. The idea is, we live together but separately for a month. No hugs, no chores for each other, no checking in, just space. For both of us, I blinked. Wait, like roommates? But still married? Exactly. Roommates with emotional awareness. I tilted my head. That's a creative way to say we're tired of each other. That's not what I'm saying, she said quickly. It's not a breakup, it's a reset. We've gotten stuck. I want to rediscover myself, and you should too. I stared at her, trying to decide if this was a real conversation or some new age prank. So, let me get this straight. For 30 days, we pretend not to be married, and that's supposed to make us better at being married? She nodded like it was perfectly logical. We'll still be under the same roof. We'll just detach. No expectations, no obligations. I said slowly. And how long before we start communicating via post-it notes? You're mocking it, she said, crossing her arms. That's your defense mechanism. Right. Sorry. I forgot sarcasm isn't part of spiritual growth. She exhaled, clearly frustrated, but also very proud of her idea. Look, it's only a month. Just think of it as a reset for us. A way to see what we miss. Or don't. That last part stuck with me. Or don't. It didn't sound like therapy. It sounded like a test I hadn't agreed to take. Still, I was too tired to fight. I'd learned long ago that arguing with someone holding a yoga mat is pointless. They're already at peace with your defeat. So I shrugged. Fine. 30 days, no hugs, no chores, no checking in. You get your awareness, I get the remote. Win-win. She brightened immediately, like she'd just converted me to her cult. I knew you'd understand. Oh, I understood. I just didn't believe in it. That night, she moved her pillow to the far end of the bed. For symbolic space, she said. Symbolic space. What a fancy way to say, I don't want to touch you. She scrolled through her phone for an hour, reading articles about emotional boundaries while I stared at the ceiling, wondering how the hell we'd reached the stage where distance was considered progress. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of blended kale. Emma was in the kitchen making a smoothie that looked like it had crawled out of a swamp. Morning, I said. Morning, she replied cheerfully. I'm doing a detox. Emotional and physical. I said, pouring coffee. So no caffeine, no hugs, no husband. Truly a full cleanse, she laughed. You're ridiculous. You'll see. You'll love this. It's liberating. I took a sip of coffee. You know what else is liberating? Divorce. She shot me a glare but kept smiling. That's resistance talking. Or logic. She grabbed her yoga mat and kissed the air somewhere near my cheek. Bye. Be kind to yourself today. I looked around the kitchen. Her half looked like a Pinterest board. Mine looked like a gas station. Maybe she was right. We did need a reset. The first few days were surprisingly peaceful. No arguments, no tension. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. She was out most of the day. Yoga, brunch, therapy, whatever. She'd come home glowing and humming some tune that probably had words like universe and vibration in it. Meanwhile, I rediscovered what free time felt like. I met up with friends, stayed out late, didn't have to text, be home soon. I ordered takeout without pretending I wanted salad. I watched car rebuild videos for hours without hearing, "Why do men watch other men fix things instead of fixing themselves?" It was glorious. We weren't fighting. We weren't even talking much. But when we did, it was civil, polite, almost friendly. She'd walk past me in her robe, hair up, glass of wine in hand, and say, "Good night." And I'd nod, "You too, roommate." She'd roll her eyes, but I could tell she found it funny, at least a little. Day 5. She came home with shopping bags, candles, books, a fancy journal with a quote on the cover, "Find peace in your own company." She held it up proudly. "Isn't it perfect?" "Yeah," I said. "It's a lot cheaper than therapy." "You're such a cynic," she said, laughing. "That's why you need this too. You never stop joking. If I stop, who's going to narrate your self-discovery montage?" She threw a pillow at me and went to light her new candles. The house started smelling like eucalyptus and burnt money. That night, she sat cross-legged on the couch, journaling. I was next to her watching a game on mute. It was quiet, almost nice. Two people sharing the same space, but not demanding anything from each other. I looked over at her, focused, peaceful. And for a moment, I thought maybe this weird idea could work. Day 6. I came home from work to find her laughing on the phone with her friends. She was saying things like, "It's honestly great. I feel so independent. No pressure, no obligations. We're like two adults coexisting in peace." When she saw me, she mouthed, "Love you," sarcastically, and went back to her call. I made myself a burger, sat down, and realized she hadn't cooked all week, and I didn't care. This version of us was weirdly functional. Detached, yes, but calm. Later, she poured herself wine and sat next to me. "You know," she said, "this whole thing is kind of amazing. No pressure, no expectations, no chores. I feel like I can finally breathe." I looked at her. "Glad breathing's back on the schedule." She smirked. "You joke, but I mean it. I think we forgot how to just be. I think we forgot how to do dishes," I said. She laughed. "You're impossible." "Thanks. It's one of my boundaries." She took a sip and smiled at me. Genuinely, not the polite kind. I like this version of us. Peaceful, no fights, no nagging, just space. "Yeah," I said, "like neighbors who occasionally share oxygen." She nudged me with her foot. "Don't ruin it." I raised my glass of soda to her. "To peace and personal space." She clinked her wine against it. "To growth." And for the first time in a while, we both smiled at the same time. That night, as we lay in bed, or technically in our separate zones, she whispered, "Do you think this will change us?" I said, "It already has. You're sleeping diagonally now." She laughed into the pillow. "I mean it." "I know." "Yeah, maybe it will. Maybe we'll actually start missing each other." There was a pause. A quiet kind of pause, not cold, not tense, just space. Then she said softly, "Good night," and I said, "Good luck with your boundaries." By day 10, we had settled into a rhythm. She journaled, meditated, and posted a quote every morning. Healing starts with detachment. I worked, met friends, fixed the car, and didn't ask where she was going. We coexisted like professionals. Polite, distant, functional. It was oddly balanced. She got to feel free. I got to feel unbothered. And yet, in the back of my head, something whispered that all this peace felt suspiciously temporary, like the calm before the moment life decides to test your patience or flood your laundry room. Saturday morning didn't start with an alarm. It started with Emma's scream, "The washer's flooding! Can you—" "Oh, never mind, I'll handle it." I blinked. Nothing makes a man reconsider the concept of boundaries faster than the sound of water hitting tile. I walked to the bathroom doorway and leaned on the frame like a supervisor. Foam spread across the floor. A single sock floated past my foot. Emma stood barefoot in the chaos, holding a towel like a weapon. Everything under control? I asked. Obviously not, she snapped. Can you help me? Sorry, I said. Rule? No help with chores? She stopped and turned toward me, dripping frustration. That's different. This is an emergency? Yeah, I said. So were most of our arguments. She stared at me, towel in hand, eyes full of disbelief. Then she muttered, "Unbelievable," and got back to fighting the flood. For the next 5 minutes, I stood there, watching her twist the valve, curse under her breath, and mop with the determination of someone trying to prove a point to God. Finally, she grabbed her phone. Fine. I'll call a plumber smart, I said. Independent women handle their own plumbing. I swear to God, if you say one more thing, you'll what? Violate the experiment? Her glare could have boiled the water itself. The plumber arrived an hour later, a big guy with permanent apathy written on his face. He looked around the bathroom and said, "Pump's dead." Probably the filter too. Seen it 100 times, Emma nodded like she understood a word of it. "Can you fix it today?" "Sure," he said, quoting a number that sounded like a punishment. She flinched but tried to stay composed. Her eyes flicked toward me for a second. Pure instinct. And then she looked away. "You're handling it?" I reminded her softly. Her lips tightened. "I am." When he left, the bathroom was half dry, the bill was on the counter, and the silence in the house had grown heavy enough to have its own gravity. I poured coffee. She sat at the table staring at the repair invoice like it had personally insulted her. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine." "Good." I was worried freedom might be getting expensive. "You're an ass." "Technically, I'm just uninvolved." She stood up so abruptly her chair scraped the floor. "You think this is funny?" "A little," I said honestly. "You wanted boundaries. The universe gave you plumbing problems. Poetic, really." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Instead, she grabbed a mop and started cleaning the last traces of water. Slow, angry, determined. I leaned back and watched for a moment. It wasn't satisfying exactly, more ironic. For years, I'd been the fixer. She'd say, "It's leaking," and I'd show up with tools and towels. No lecture, no delay. And now here we were, an independent woman and a man reading the fine print of emotional contracts. When she finished, she dropped the mop, exhaled sharply, and said, "I would have helped you." "Yeah," I said, "if I asked wrong." "You're impossible." "Consistent." She disappeared into the bedroom. For the rest of the day, the silence between us evolved, from peaceful to performative. We didn't argue, but every movement spoke louder than words. Her walking too fast past me in the hallway. My exaggerated politeness. "After you." Her closing doors slightly harder than needed. Me pretending not to notice. In the evening, she cooked. For herself. The smell filled the kitchen. Something with quinoa and moral superiority. She plated her food, took one look at me microwaving pizza and said, "That's disgusting." "It's called independence." "You're mocking me again?" "That's resistance," I said, repeating her line from week 1. She almost smiled. Almost. Then rolled her eyes and walked away. I ate my pizza in peace. It was the most satisfying silence of my life. Sunday morning was quieter than usual. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I poured coffee and didn't offer her any. She noticed. "You could have asked if I wanted some." "Boundaries," I reminded her. "No emotional labor, no shared caffeine." She sighed. "You're really taking this seriously." "Hey, I'm committed to your personal growth." She shook her head and laughed under her breath. "You're enjoying this too much." "I'm enjoying not being the villain in your journey to self-awareness." For a moment, we both smiled, tired, sarcastic, human. Then she said quietly, "I didn't want to make us strangers." "And yet," I said, "we're two strangers who own the same couch." She didn't reply, just stared out the window, lost somewhere between pride and regret. That afternoon, I went for a drive. When I got back, she was cleaning the living room, headphones in, pretending not to notice me. The washer hummed quietly in the background, fixed, obedient, unlike us. At dinner, she finally broke the silence. "You really didn't care, did you?" "About what?" "The washer. The mess. Me freaking out. I just didn't interfere." She looked at me for a long time, like she was trying to find the man she remembered in the one sitting across from her. "You wanted me to fight for you," I said. "To break your rules so you could say I never respected your boundaries." "That's not true." "Maybe not consciously." But it would have fit the story, she exhaled. "Maybe I just wanted to see if you'd still care." "I do," I said quietly. "I just stopped auditioning for the part." The room went still. Then she said, almost to herself, "I didn't think you'd actually listen." "Guess I'm a fast learner," I said, and took another bite of pizza. That night, we got ready for bed in silence. She brushed her teeth while I folded laundry. When she climbed into bed, her pillow wasn't as far away as usual, just a few inches closer. "Good night," she said softly. "You too," I answered. We lay there in the dark, both pretending to sleep. The house was quiet. No dripping water, no tension, just a calm that felt heavier than noise. And somewhere between awake and asleep, I realized she'd wanted space to breathe, and I'd given it to her, maybe too well. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee. She joined me a few minutes later, still half asleep, hair a mess, wearing my old hoodie. She didn't say anything, just poured herself a cup. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she murmured. She sat at the table, staring at the steam. "So, we're really doing this, huh?" "We're model students," I said. "Top of the class in emotional distance." "I hate that you make it sound funny." "I hate that it kinda is." We both smiled, small, tired, honest. She picked up her mug and said quietly, "You know, I didn't expect it to feel this empty." "Freedom usually does." She nodded. "Yeah." That was the last thing we said all morning. The silence wasn't cruel anymore, just real. Like the calm after a storm that no one wanted but both needed. And for the first time, I think we both started wondering what we'd actually learned from these 30 days, and whether either of us would like the answer. By week 3, silence had stopped being awkward. It had a schedule now, like a third roommate who always showed up on time. Morning coffee in silence. Dinner in silence. Netflix in separate corners of the couch, pretending to laugh at the same parts. It wasn't tension anymore. It was routine, and routine is always more dangerous than anger. She still went for her evening walks, the ones she used to call recharging. Now they looked more like escape routes. I'd see her from the window, earbuds in, scrolling her phone between steps. Freedom on autopilot. I kept my peace too. No, where are you going? No, when will you be back? Just a quiet nod and the same sentence every night. Don't forget your keys. The irony didn't miss me. She'd asked for distance, and I'd turned it into an art form. Wednesday night, she was on the couch with her laptop, wearing that focused expression she gets when pretending to work. I sat across from her, flipping through my phone. It was one of those silences that started to itch. "You're really fine with this, aren't you?" she asked suddenly. "With what?" "This." She waved around vaguely. "Us, the..." "Whatever this is," I shrugged. "You said you wanted space." "I'm just giving it the respect it deserves." She studied me like she was waiting for the punchline. "You're not even a little bothered?" "I was," I said. "Then I realized I've been training for this since you discovered yoga podcasts." Her mouth twitched, halfway to a smile that didn't survive the landing. She looked down, folded her arms. "I thought you'd fight me on it." "Why?" I asked. "So you could say I don't respect your boundaries?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "That's not... I didn't mean..." "I know," I said. "You wanted control. I just didn't realize you'd get bored so fast." She glared, but it didn't stick. For the first time, she didn't look confident. She looked tired. The next evening, I noticed something strange. She hadn't gone out all week. No girls' brunches, no wine selfies, no giggling on the phone with her friends, just home. While she stirred her tea, I asked casually, "You don't hang out with your friends anymore?" She looked up, surprised. "What? I mean, you used to go out all the time? I thought that was part of your self-rediscovery program. Freedom, laughter, sisterhood, all that." She smirked faintly. "They're busy." "Busy? Yeah, kids, jobs, husbands, real life, you know?" "Guess that leaves you in the toaster," I said. She laughed once, not the good kind. "Yeah, me in the toaster. We understand each other." I smiled, but inside something shifted. That was the first crack. Small, barely visible, but there. The kind of crack that doesn't make noise, until it does. Friday rolled around like a rerun. We sat on opposite sides of the living room, her reading, me pretending to read. The silence was so thick it could have been furniture. That's when my phone buzzed. Mike, the human version of bad decisions. "Lake this weekend," he said. "Cabin, beer, no feelings. You in?" I hesitated. "I don't know." "Emma's." "What?" "Not your supervisor." "Come on, man, you sound like you're trapped in a therapy podcast." I laughed. "You have no idea. All the more reason to come. Bring your quiet self in a cooler." I almost said no. Then I looked at Emma, sitting there with her book open but eyes unfocused, like she was reading the same line over and over just to fill the air. "Yeah," I said finally, "I'll come." That night, while we brushed our teeth in parallel silence, I said, "I'm going to the lake this weekend." "Mike and the guys." She nodded slowly, toothpaste foam on her lip. "Oh, that's nice. You want me to stay?" Her eyes flicked toward me, then back to the mirror. "No. We agreed on no checking in, right." She rinsed, grabbed a towel, and said over her shoulder, "Drive safe." That shouldn't have sounded emotional, but it did. It was short, simple, and full of everything we hadn't said for 3 weeks. Saturday morning I packed. She was already up, making tea in the kitchen, hair still messy from sleep. "You packed snacks?" she asked, not looking at me. "I'm not 12. She smiled faintly. "You forget things." "Not lately." The words came out sharper than I meant. She froze for a second, then just said, "Okay." I zipped my bag, checked my phone, and paused at the door. "Want me to text when I get there?" She thought for a moment. That wouldn't break any rules. I nodded. "All right then." The pause between us stretched out. Not long, just heavy. Then I said, "See you Sunday." "See you," she echoed, eyes still on her cup. Driving out of the city, I felt something strange. Not relief, not guilt, just emptiness. Like I was leaving behind a version of myself I hadn't liked much lately. The radio played one of her favorite songs. I turned it off halfway through. Didn't want to admit it still reminded me of her. By the time I reached the highway, I realized I hadn't smiled for real in days. And I started wondering if this experiment had ever been about freedom at all, or if it was just both of us testing how long love could hold its breath. The drive to the lake took 3 hours and half a podcast about emotional detachment, which felt ironic coming through car speakers. I didn't finish it. I preferred the sound of the road. Honest, at least. The guys were already there when I pulled up. Mike, of course, was shirtless, holding a beer like it was a personality trait. Ben was trying to light a grill that clearly hated him. And Joe, divorced twice, self-proclaimed expert on freedom, was giving advice nobody had asked for. "To freedom!" Mike shouted, raising his can. "Temporary," I said. "That's what all the married ones say," he laughed. We ate badly, drank worse, and told stories that didn't matter. For a while, I forgot about lists, rules, and silent breakfasts. It felt good, until it didn't. Around midnight, when everyone else drifted off toward their bunks, I stayed by the fire. The lake was black glass. The stars looked like they were eavesdropping. I pulled out my phone. There was a half-typed message already waiting. "Made it. Drive was fine. I hit send. 3 minutes later, she replied, "Good, get some rest." 2 dots appeared, then disappeared. Nothing else. Somehow that blank space said more than words could have. I stared at the screen for a long minute, then pocketed the phone and whispered to the fire, "Yeah, you too." The next morning, the guys were loud enough to wake nature. We went fishing, badly, drank more beer than water. Mike joked about marriage again, something about built-in roommates. I laughed because it was easier than explaining how much I missed hearing her complain about my snoring. By Sunday, I wanted to go home. The jokes weren't funny anymore. The air smelled like smoke and regret, and the lake looked too much like a mirror. Driving back, I realized I'd memorized the road more than I'd memorized my wife lately. I used to notice little things. Her laugh, the way she tapped her finger on her coffee mug, how she always left the last bite for me, but secretly wanted it herself. Now I couldn't remember the last time I'd made her laugh. Maybe that was the real silence, the one that starts inside you. When I opened the front door, the smell of lemon cleaner hit me. Everything was spotless. The house didn't feel lived in. It felt managed. "Hey," I called. "In here," she said. She was at the kitchen table, in my old hoodie, hair up, tea gone cold. The sight of her hit me harder than I expected. Not dramatic, just familiar in a way that hurt. I put my bag down. "Hey," she looked up, smiled weakly. "Hey, how was the lake?" "Loud," I said. "Lots of bad advice." "Yours?" "Quiet." She gave a half laugh that wasn't really a laugh. Too quiet. I sat down across from her. For a few seconds, we just listened to the hum of the fridge, the soundtrack of modern marriage. "You okay?" I asked finally. She nodded. "I'm fine." Then softer. "No, I'm not." She took a slow breath, eyes still on the cup. I thought it'd be fun, you know? Friday night, no pressure. I poured some wine, danced around, watched one of those movies we used to quote. I even texted Lena a photo of my glass like some kind of influencer of loneliness. "Influencer of loneliness," I repeated. "Nice title." "Right?" She smiled sadly. But Saturday, it was different. I woke up late. The house was too quiet. I tried journaling, cleaning, meditating. You know, all the things you're supposed to do when you focus on yourself. She made air quotes. I ended up talking to the toaster. Did it answer? "No," she said, eyes glinting with humor and something else. But it judged me. We both laughed. Short, awkward, real. She went on quietly. I looked at our photos. Not a lot of them, just enough to remember we used to be fun and loud and messy. I missed that, the noise, the part where life happened even when it wasn't perfect. I leaned back, nodding slowly. "Peace without connection isn't peace," I said. "It's just quiet with better marketing." Her eyes lifted to mine, and something shifted there, the first spark of warmth I'd seen in weeks. "I wanted to see if I could live without you," she said softly. "Turns out I can. It just feels like winning the wrong prize." "Yeah," I said. "Same." We sat there, no smiles this time, no jokes, just two people finally honest. She looked toward the fridge where her old list of rules still hung, slightly torn, corners curling. She got up, peeled it off, and brought it back to the table. "This was supposed to fix us," she said. "Maybe it did," I answered. She tilted her head. "You think so?" "It showed us what happens when we stop trying." She stared at the paper for a long moment, then tore it cleanly in half and dropped it in the trash. The sound was small, but it felt loud. "New rules?" I asked. "Simple ones." She grabbed a notepad and pen. Her handwriting was slower now, careful, almost shy. "Rule number 1, talk before we disconnect." She slid it to me. "Your turn." I wrote underneath, "Rule number 2, listen before we defend." She nodded. "Add one more." "Something that sounds like you," I thought for a second, then wrote, "Rule number 3, if something breaks, we fix it together, even if it's not the washer." That made her laugh for real this time. "The washer's forgiven you," she said. "I'll apologize to it personally." We taped the new list to the fridge where the old one used to hang. It looked small, uneven, human, perfect. She stood there reading it again, then asked quietly, "Can I hug you, or does that need a permission slip now?" I smiled. "I think we're good." She stepped closer, slowly, like she wasn't sure the bridge between us would hold. Then she wrapped her arms around me, no drama, no trembling, just warmth. Her head fit against my shoulder like it remembered the way. "I missed this," she whispered. "Me too," I said. We stayed like that for a long moment. No timer, no scorecard, no therapist-approved breathing exercises, just quiet, but finally the right kind. When she pulled back, her eyes were soft again. "So, what happens now?" "Now?" I said. "We stop pretending to be strangers." She smiled. "I can do that." "Good," I said, "because I'm out of clean laundry and emotional distance." She laughed, a real one this time, and the house, for the first time in weeks, sounded alive again. A few weeks later, she called it the month that almost made us roommates. I called it relationship boot camp, without the gym part. Either way, we survived it. And honestly, I learned more about marriage in those 30 days than in the 5 years before it. See, the experiment wasn't about distance. Not really. It was about control. She wanted to know if she could find herself without losing me, and I wanted to see if I could stop trying to fix everything that wasn't broken yet. Turns out we were both right, and both idiots. For the first 10 days, she acted like freedom was a vacation package. Brunches, wine, playlists with names like Independent Vibes. Meanwhile, I discovered that solitude is just peace with worse lighting. By week 2, the washing machine drowned her pride, and she learned that plumbing emergencies don't care about self-growth. Week 3, the silence started sounding less like calm and more like a missing heartbeat. And by week 4, we'd both run out of ways to pretend this was healthy. That's when it clicked. Boundaries aren't about building walls. They're about learning when to open the damn door. When you spend a month pretending not to need someone, you eventually find out what you actually miss. Not the big things, not anniversaries or kisses or whatever people post online. You miss the stupid stuff. The way she steals the blanket and claims it's emotional support fabric. The way she hums off key when she's cooking. The way the house sounds alive when she's just around. Freedom's great until you realize there's no one to share it with. She didn't need a new version of herself. She just needed to remember she was already loved without having to earn it. And I didn't need to prove I could survive alone. I already knew I could. I just didn't want to anymore. Now, months later, things are quieter, but in the right way. She still takes her evening walks. I still make coffee every morning. But there's talking in between again, the kind where you actually listen, not just wait for your turn. Sometimes she teases me. "Remember when I said we should live like roommates?" And I say, "Yeah. You were the worst roommate I ever had." Then she laughs, kisses my cheek, and says, "Lucky for you, I renewed the lease." We still have arguments. We still mess up. But the difference now is that we stop keeping score. We learned that love isn't a constant test. It's a series of small, stupid choices to stay. And after 30 days of distance, that's what we finally did. We stayed. Because the truth is, it was never about proving we could live without each other. It was about remembering why we didn't want to. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.